Good evening, my name is Lauren Thompson, and I will be talking about something that has been in recent news, and it has to do with resources. And as we know, resources that we find here on Earth, such as iron and all the other ores, we use them for everything in our everyday lives. And this is a big industry, of course, and they require big machines, big smelting plants, big transportation is a really big industry, and a lot of the materials that we get are labor intensive. It's really hard to get it out of the earth, and transporting it is the least of it. But the smelting is hot. It's hard to get, and a lot of the heavier metals towards like the platinum edge of the periodic table are very rare and very hard to get, and that's very challenging. However, asteroids in space have been shown to be extremely rich in these resources like platinum or rubidium and all of these, which we use in our more high-tech things like fuel cells. But getting them is very hard, and that makes the minerals expensive. But a thing going about is, well, they're asteroids, they're in space. That's science fiction to plan on going out to get those resources and mining those asteroids. That's a far-fetched idea, right? Because, we can't even get to the moon. We shutting down our space program. That's far-fetched. However, a new company called Planetary Resources has just recently come out in the last couple of days, and they've talked about they do plan on getting these asteroids and mining them. And that's very strange, but from another perspective, you could say that's very good. And the first thing they would have to do is get a space telescope similar to the Hubble to find these asteroids, to say, okay, this one we can mine, this one we can find. And that's sort of like prospecting when you're on the ground. And then they would have to send a probe to it. And that probe could either look at it and say, okay, yes, it does have the resources we want, and then plan to go to it again with a different probe, or that same probe could also be able to start mining it. And all the stuff they would be able to find, they could bring back that way. And it's easier to go to some asteroids because at times they do come closer to Earth than the moon. These are the near Earth asteroids, of course. There's the asteroid belt, but some of them come closer to Earth than the moon, and we can get there shorter and mine for these resources. And if I think the statistics was saying that one platinum-rich asteroid, which would mean it has all the heavier elements, would have more of those minerals than we've ever been able to mine on Earth. And think if we were able to mine one. Our TVs, our computers, our fuel cells, all these things would be cheaper because getting the resources is becoming more cost efficient. It might cost a lot to get there, but think of how much you'd get back, and the prices would start going down, and technologies could start advancing, which would then mean getting there is cheaper. But another thing about these asteroids is it's said to have ice on them, and ice is water. And if you melt that ice, you get water. And so astronauts that we might send up later can drink the waters. That keeps them sustained, so we don't have to keep sending water from Earth, which is very expensive. But also we can use that water to feed them, because they can start growing their own plants in space, which they do with hydroponics. But we need water for that, and again, water is very expensive, but getting it from these asteroids would allow them to start growing their own stuff. But also, water is H2O, two hydrogen atoms and one oxygen. And through processes, we can split those atoms up and get hydrogen and oxygen, and we need oxygen to breathe. So another thing that we can keep with sustaining our resources in space just from these asteroids that come near Earth. And a byproduct, you could say, is, well, taking these asteroids out of orbit to mine them keeps them from hitting Earth. And I sure like to live, and an asteroid coming and hitting Earth could kill all of us. It's what, wiped out the dinosaurs mainly. But By having all these resources and the same ability, we could basically set up gas stations, if you would like, in orbit around Earth and even further out, to where spaceships could stop and refuel and get water and food. And this would give us much more sustainability than we have now, which would allow us to build what had NASA and everyone's talked about for a long time, is a base on the moon, and eventually a city if it is successful, which, if we can sustain ourselves, it should be. And if we had a base on the moon, we could get further out with asteroids, and then more of the gas stations, and go to Mars. And once we're at Mars, again, mine for its resources, its area for us to expand into, because area for us as a living species is always growing less and less, because we're always pushing out with more numbers. But we need the resources, and after we get to Mars, who knows? We might be able to go to Jupiter or to Saturn or down to Neptune or eventually to the different stars, but this requires a step, and that first step would be an asteroid, and mine it and move on from there. But it's a difficult thought, because asteroids are always seen as being far out, and that's science fiction. But it always requires a step, and the first step is getting to those asteroids and mining them for what they contain, and using that to our advantage to advance ourselves as a species.